In the shadowed halls of a sprawling mansion overlooking the sun-baked hills of suburban Atlanta, a man of immense wealth paused outside his daughter's bedroom door one fateful afternoon. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and distant garden blooms, but what froze him in place was a sound he hadn't heard in years, a soft melody intertwined with rhythmic footsteps, echoing faintly through the crack in the door. His heart raced as he peered inside, his mind flooding with a mix of confusion and rising anger. There, in the dim light filtering through heavy curtains, was his paralyzed daughter, her frail form propped up in her wheelchair, her eyes alight, with a spark he thought long extinguished. And beside her, moving with effortless grace, was the daughter of his Black Maid, a young girl from the wrong side of town, daring to dance in this sacred space. The millionaire's fists clenched. In his world of rigid boundaries and unspoken rules, this intrusion crossed lines drawn by generations of privilege and prejudice. What he would do next could shatter lives or redefine them. But in that suspended moment, the weight of his decision hung like a storm about to break, leaving everyone who would later hear the tale utterly stunned. The mansion belonged to Edward Harrington, a self-made millionaire whose fortune stemmed from a chain of luxury real estate developments across the South. At 52, Edward was a man shaped by the old ways, born into a family where racial divides were as natural as the segregated neighborhoods he grew up in during the 1980s. His world was one of white-collar boardrooms and exclusive country clubs, where people like him rarely mingled with those he deemed beneath his station. His daughter, Lily, now 12, had once been the light of his life, a vibrant child full of energy and laughter. But 3 years earlier, a tragic car accident had left her paralyzed from the waist down, confining her to a wheelchair and plunging her into a silent depression. Doctors had tried everything: therapies, medications, experimental treatments. But Lily withdrew further each day, her once bright eyes dulled by isolation and pain. Edward, overwhelmed by grief and his demanding career, hired help to manage the household, turning to Maria Gonzalez, a Black woman in her 40s who had immigrated from a small town in Mississippi, seeking better opportunities for her family. Maria worked tirelessly, cleaning the vast rooms and preparing meals with quiet efficiency, all while facing the subtle slights that came with her role: Edward's curt instructions, his avoidance of eye contact, and the unspoken assumption that she and her kind were there to serve, not to integrate. Maria's own daughter, Aisha, was 10, a spirited girl with a love for music and movement, often accompanying her mother to work during school holidays because childcare was a luxury they couldn't afford. Aisha's presence in the mansion was tolerated but never welcomed. Edward saw her as an extension of the help, a reminder of the economic and racial chasms that separated their worlds. Yet, as days turned into weeks, curiosity began to brew. Small glimpses of Aisha humming tunes in the kitchen, or Lily's faint smiles when distant sounds of play filtered through the walls. The stage was set for an encounter that would test the fragile boundaries of prejudice and humanity, drawing viewers deeper into the unfolding drama. As the summer heat intensified, so did the undercurrents of tension within the Harrington household. Edward's days were consumed by business deals that often involved skirting around fair housing laws, subtly favoring developments in predominantly white areas while redlining others, a practice rooted in the racial biases he had inherited and never questioned. At home, he noticed subtle changes in Lily, her appetite improving slightly, her gaze lingering longer on the windows instead of staring blankly at the floor. Unbeknownst to him, these shifts stemmed from secret moments when Aisha, bored during her mother's long shifts, slipped into Lily's room. It started innocently, Aisha sharing stories of her neighborhood dances, then demonstrating simple steps that made Lily's fingers twitch in response. Soon, Aisha was playing soft music from her old phone, swaying gently and encouraging Lily to join in whatever way she could, their shared laughter a quiet rebellion against the mansion's stifling silence. But racial injustice simmered beneath the surface. Maria faced daily microaggressions. Edward's offhand comments about people like you needing to work harder, his insistence on separate entrances for staff, and the way he scrutinized her every move as if expecting theft or incompetence. Aisha, too, felt the sting. Overhearing whispers from Edward's guests about those kids invading proper spaces or being shooed away like an unwelcome stray. The emotional stakes heightened when Lily began showing physical improvements, her upper body moving more fluidly during therapy sessions, attributed by doctors to renewed motivation. Yet Edward's growing suspicion mounted. He installed subtle cameras in common areas, not out of concern for Lily's well-being, but from a deep-seated fear of outsiders corrupting his family. One evening, as racial tensions in the city escalated, with news of protests against discriminatory housing, Edward returned home early, his mind poisoned by a board meeting where colleagues joked about keeping certain elements out of their communities. The air crackled with impending conflict, each passing day pulling the threads of injustice tighter, leading inexorably to the moment of discovery that would force Edward to confront the prejudices he had long ignored. The confrontation erupted on a sweltering afternoon when Edward, alerted by a faint melody on his phone's security feed, stormed toward Lily's room. Bursting through the door, he found the scene that would haunt and transform him. Aisha, her dark curls bouncing with each step, dancing freely around Lily's wheelchair, her hands gently guiding Lily's arms in a mimicry of rhythm. Lily's face was alive with joy, her body leaning forward as if defying its limitations. Edward's rage boiled over, fueled by years of ingrained bias. The sight of this black child, daughter of his maid, presuming to touch his precious girl, felt like a violation of every social order he upheld. He advanced, his shadow looming large, the room thick with the potential for destruction as old prejudices clashed with the raw evidence of kindness before him. In the aftermath of that charged moment, Edward's initial impulse to lash out, to fire Maria on the spot and banish Aisha forever, faltered as he witnessed Lily's tear-streaked plea in her eyes, a silent testament to the bond that had rekindled her spirit. Instead of destruction, something shifted within him. He paused, truly seeing Aisha not as an intruder, but as a child whose simple acts of empathy had achieved what money and medicine could not. Over the following weeks, Edward took unprecedented steps. He funded specialized therapy for Lily, inspired by Aisha's intuitive play, and extended support to Maria's family, covering Aisha's education and even advocating for fair housing reforms in his developments to combat the racial divides he had perpetuated. The mansion transformed from a fortress of isolation into a space of tentative connection, with Aisha's visits becoming welcomed rather than hidden. Lily's progress accelerated, her paralysis no longer a prison but a challenge met with communal strength, while Edward grappled with his past, attending community workshops on racial equity and quietly donating to causes fighting injustice. The story spread through whispers in the city, stunning neighbors and colleagues who had known Edward as unyielding. In the end, this tale of unexpected grace highlights how racial barriers, built on fear and ignorance, can crumble under the weight of human connection. What if one act of kindness could bridge the divides that society insists are unbreakable? Reflect on your own world. Where might prejudice be hiding, and what small step could stun everyone by changing it forever?